First contact and fall. The stars died first. Captain Sarah Chen watched through the observation deck of Lunar Command as distant points of light simply vanished. Not in any particular pattern, just random stars winking out of existence, as if someone was slowly erasing the universe with an invisible hand. Multiple contacts approaching. Captain. Lieutenant Park's voice crackled through the comm. Configuration unknown. They're not showing up on standard sensors. We're only detecting them through gravitational distortions. The Nexari arrived without warning or declaration. Their ships appeared as pitch-black silhouettes against the already darkening sky, shapes that seemed to absorb not just light, but reality itself. Earth's first contact with an alien civilization wasn't a message of peace or a diplomatic envoy. It was an extinction event. The initial assault targeted Earth's outer colonies. New Mars fell in hours, its dome cities cracking like eggs under weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. The defense fleet's most powerful weapons dissipated harmlessly against the invaders' hulls. It wasn't even a battle, it was pest control. They're calling themselves the Nexari Empire, Admiral Hassan reported during the Emergency Council meeting, his hologram flickering with interference. Their message was brief. They've declared humanity a reality-polluting species that must be cleansed from existence. According to their laws, our very method of faster-than-light travel is an abomination that damages the fabric of space-time. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she watched the casualty reports scroll past. 30 million dead in the first wave alone. The Nexari's weapons didn't just kill, they erased. Entire colonies vanished, leaving behind only gravitational echoes where planets should have been. But in their arrogance, the Nexari made a crucial mistake. They assumed humanity would accept extinction with dignity. They didn't understand that backing humans into a corner had historically been a fatal error. In a hidden facility beneath the Mariana Trench, Dr. Elena Santos made a discovery that would change everything. The Nexari's technology operated on principles that violated what humanity understood about physics, but those violations left traces, quantum irregularities, temporal distortions, hints at something greater and more terrible than humanity had ever dared to explore. The Nexari aren't advanced because they broke the rules, Elena explained to the Emergency Council, her eyes fever-bright with possibilities. They're advanced because they found new rules to follow. But what if we didn't follow any rules at all? The council members shifted uncomfortably as Elena brought up her simulations. The mathematics was beyond most of them, but the implications were clear. The Nexari had mastered the art of bending reality. Humanity would have to break it entirely to survive. Project Phoenix is approved, Admiral Hassan declared, his voice heavy with the weight of what they were about to attempt. God help us all. Sarah was chosen to oversee the military aspect of the project. As she stood in the underwater facility, watching engineers begin construction on weapons that shouldn't exist, she thought about the millions already lost, about her sister on New Mars, about humanity's future. The Nexari thought humans were primitive creatures to be exterminated. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything, even reality itself, to survive. Continued in next section. The Dark Science. Dr. Elena Santos hadn't slept in 3 days, but sleep wasn't important anymore. Not when reality itself was beginning to unravel in her laboratory. The prototype sat in the center of the testing chamber, a device no larger than a coffee maker that somehow cast shadows in directions that shouldn't exist. Elena's team had taken to calling it the Paradise Engine, though there was nothing paradisiacal about what it did to the laws of physics. Trial 47 commencing, Elena announced into her recorder. The device hummed to life, its surface rippling like water flowing upward against gravity. Initial quantum stability at 15%, increasing power toe. The air cracked, not with sound, but with something deeper, as if the fundamental forces holding atoms together had briefly screamed in protest. When Elena's vision cleared, The testing chamber had changed. The walls remained the same, but they now showed signs of decades of wear. Plant life that had never existed in the facility grew from cracks that had formed over centuries that had passed in seconds. Time dilation effect confirmed. Elena continued, her voice steady despite the implications of what she was seeing. Local temporal acceleration factor approximately 3,000 to 1. Note: organic matter in the chamber has experienced rapid aging equivalent to. Interesting. The bacterial cultures show evolutionary changes that should have taken millions of years to develop. Captain Chen watched from behind the safety of quantum-shielded glass, her expression unreadable. Can we weaponize it? Elena turned to face her, gesturing at the transformed chamber. Sarah, we're not just breaking the laws of physics anymore. We're rewriting them. The Nexera use technology that bends reality in controlled, predictable ways. This, she laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. This is like taking a sledgehammer to the universe itself. The implications were staggering. The Paradise engine didn't just accelerate time. It created localized bubbles where causality itself broke down. Anything caught in its field would experience an essentially infinite number of possible futures simultaneously. For living tissue, the result was messy. But it was just the beginning. As Project Phoenix progressed, Elena's team made breakthrough after breakthrough, each more horrifying than the last. They developed ways to create spaces where probability itself collapsed, where the distinction between possible and impossible became meaningless. Weapons that didn't just destroy their targets, but retroactively erased them from history. The cost was high. 3 researchers vanished during testing, only to reappear days later speaking languages that had never existed. Another aged 50 years in the span of minutes. The nightmares became constant. Not just normal bad dreams, but shared visions that seemed to leak through from other realities. Story continues with mounting tension and scientific horror. Vengeance takes form. The shipyards of Titan were no longer visible to normal human eyes. Where massive construction facilities had once orbited Saturn's largest moon, there now existed only a void that hurt to look at. A space where the normal rules of reality had been suspended to build something that shouldn't exist. The U.S. Prometheus took shape in this impossible space, its hull forged from materials that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. It was beautiful in the way that black holes were beautiful, a thing so fundamentally wrong that it curved the human mind around itself rather than allow full comprehension. Final system check complete, reported Chief Engineer Marcus Wong, his voice distorted by the reality distortions that now permeated the shipyard. The Paradise engines are stable isn't the right word. Let's say they're consistently unstable in exactly the way we want them to be. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, trying to ignore the way the walls seemed to breathe. The Prometheus wasn't just a warship. It was humanity's declaration that they would rather break reality itself than submit to extinction. The ship's primary weapon was officially designated the causality cannon, though the engineering team had taken to calling it the God Killer. It didn't fire energy or matter. It fired possibility itself, concentrated into a beam that could rewrite the past and future of anything it touched. We've completed the final trials, Dr. Santos reported during the commissioning ceremony, her hair now streaked with white despite her young age. The Prometheus can generate temporal shock waves that will age enemy crews thousands of years in seconds. Its defensive systems create zones where probability collapses. Incoming fire simply ceases to have ever been fired. But the Prometheus wasn't alone. 11 more ships took shape in the void, each powered by technologies that violated different fundamental laws of physics. The U.S. Nemesis could create spaces where time ran backward. The U.S. Oracle could project multiple future timelines into the present, letting it predict and counter enemy actions before they occurred. Together, they were designated the Nightmare Fleet, humanity's answer to extinction. Each ship was a wound in reality, a declaration that humans would rather unmake the universe than accept their own destruction. The cost was visible in the crews. Every member had to be specifically chosen for their ability to maintain sanity while reality twisted around them. They experienced time differently now, living multiple possible lives simultaneously, dying countless deaths while somehow remaining alive. "We're no longer human," Captain Chen told her crew during their final briefing. "Not entirely. The Paradise engines have changed us, just as they've changed our ships. But we're still humanity's best hope for survival." The Nexari's next attack came exactly as the Oracle had predicted, a fleet of their reality-bending ships emerging from the darkness between stars to cleanse another human world. But this time, humanity was ready. As the Nightmare fleet moved to engage, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The universe was about to learn that there were things far worse than bending its laws. There was breaking them entirely. "All ships, battle formations," Chen ordered, watching as space itself began to warp around her fleet. "Let's show them what primitive species are capable of." The breaking point. The battle began in silence. In the void between Mars and Jupiter, two fleets faced each other across a gulf of empty space, one representing the ordered perfection of the Nexari Empire, the other carrying humanity's desperate violation of reality itself. Multiple Nexari capital ships detected, Lieutenant Park reported, his voice echoing strangely across multiple timelines simultaneously. Their reality-warping signatures matched those from the New Mars massacre. Captain Chen stood on the Prometheus's bridge, watching as space itself seemed to darken around the approaching Nexari vessels. Their ships were still beautiful, crystalline structures that bent light and gravity around themselves with elegant precision. But now, seeing them through the twisted lens of the Paradise engines, she could see the fundamental wrongness of their technology. "They're sending a message," communications reported. They're laughing at us, calling our ships primitive attempts at copying their superiority." Chen's lips curved into a cold smile. "Let them laugh. All ships, initiate Operation Pandora. Show them what primitive really means." The Prometheus moved first, its hull rippling as the Paradise engines spun up to full power. Reality screamed as the ship fired its causality cannon, not at the Nexari fleet, but at the space between them. The void itself shattered. What happened next defied description in any human language. The space around the Nexari fleet experienced every possible future simultaneously. Stars that wouldn't die for billions of years went supernova in seconds. Black holes formed and evaporated in the same instant. Probability itself collapsed. The Nexari's perfect formations broke as their ships tried to escape the chaos. Their technology was built to bend reality in controlled, predictable ways. There was nothing controlled about what humanity had unleashed. U.S. Nemesis reporting temporal inversion successful. Tactical announced. 3 Nexari ships caught in the backwash. They're experiencing their own destruction in reverse, over and over again. The U.S. Oracle moved through the chaos like a predator, its probability drives letting it strike at the Nexari ships before they could even decide to change course. The aliens' elegant shields, designed to deflect energy and matter, were useless against weapons that rewrote the past to ensure they had already failed. But the true horror was yet to come. As the battle reached its peak, the laws of physics themselves began to break down. The Paradise engines weren't just bending reality anymore. They were tearing holes in it. Through these holes, things began to emerge. Things that shouldn't exist. Things that couldn't exist. Multiple dimensional breaches detected. Dr. Santos's voice crackled through the comm. "The barriers between realities are, Captain, we need to stop. The damage we're causing, it's spreading." Chen watched as space itself began to unravel around them. The Nexari fleet was in ruins, their ships twisted into impossible shapes by weapons that violated causality itself. But the victory felt hollow as she saw what they had unleashed. "All ships, power down Paradise engines," she ordered, her voice steady despite the horror she felt. "The battle is won." But as the Nightmare fleet withdrew, leaving the wreckage of the Nexari ships behind, they all knew that something fundamental had changed. They had won their first major victory against the aliens who had tried to exterminate them. But in doing so, they had done something far worse than bend the rules of reality. They had broken them completely, and in the darkness between stars, through the holes they had torn in the universe, something was watching. Something was waiting, and it was beginning to seep through. Price of victory. 3 months after humanity's first victory against the Nexari, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of what had once been a thriving colony on Titan. The settlement hadn't been destroyed by alien weapons. It had simply ceased to exist in any meaningful way. Reality had become thin here, like tissue paper stretched to breaking point. The dimensional breaches are still spreading, Dr. Santos reported, her form flickering between multiple quantum states as she walked through the distorted space. We've counted 17 major ruptures in our solar system alone. The things coming through them. She shuddered. They're getting worse. The Nexari Empire had sued for peace 2 weeks after the battle. Their elegant ships no longer approached human space, their reality-bending technology now seeming quaint compared to the horrors humanity had unleashed. They had wanted to exterminate a primitive species. Instead, they had forced that species to break the universe itself. But victory had come at a price none of them had anticipated. The Paradise engines hadn't just damaged reality. They had wounded it, and through those wounds, things were bleeding in from elsewhere. Things that existed in geometries that human minds couldn't process. Things that had been waiting for someone to break down the walls between what was possible and what was not. We've lost contact with the Nemesis, Marcus reported during the emergency council meeting. Last transmission suggested they encountered something in the Kuiper Belt. Something big. The crew was. They were screaming about angles that couldn't exist. The Prometheus's sensors had detected it too. A vast presence that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space could hold. It wasn't hostile, exactly. Hostility was too human a concept. It was simply incompatible with reality as humans understood it, and it was growing. We've won the war, Admiral Hassan said, his hologram distorting as reality fluctuated around them. But we may have lost something far more important. The universe had rules for a reason. We broke them because we had to survive. Now, he gestured at the readings showing the spreading dimensional breaches. Now we have to live with the consequences. The Nightmare Fleet, once humanity's salvation, had become a double-edged sword. Each activation of the Paradise engines widened the breaches. Each violation of causality drew more attention from the things that lurked beyond normal spacetime. Humanity had survived the Nexari, but in doing so, they had attracted the notice of entities that made their former enemies seem insignificant. Sarah stood on the Prometheus's observation deck, watching as reality rippled and twisted around her ship. The crew had changed. They all had. Prolonged exposure to the Paradise engines had altered them on a fundamental level. Some could see possible futures overlapping with the present. Others experienced time non-linearly, remembering events that hadn't happened yet. We did what we had to do, Alina said, joining her at the viewport. Both women watched as something vast and impossible moved through the distant void, its presence causing stars to blink out of existence. The Nexari would have exterminated us. We chose survival. But at what cost? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. They had survived, yes, but in their desperation to avoid extinction, they had done something far more profound than merely win a war. They had changed the fundamental nature of reality itself. The universe would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The age of predictable physical laws was over. What would replace it was anyone's guess. As Sarah gave orders to track another dimensional breach forming near Earth, she couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Nexari had tried to cleanse humanity from existence because they were reality-polluting primitives. In response, humanity had proven them right in the most spectacular way possible. They had polluted reality itself. And now, in the darkness between stars, through the holes they had torn in the universe, something new was beginning. Something that would remake everything, including humanity itself. The war was over. The age of nightmares had begun.